My name is Amy Goodman. I will play the second half of my recent conversation with writer Chris McGreal as the show winds down. From the fall of apartheid until 2002, McGreal was based out of Johannesburg for The Guardian. A self-made billionaire, Elon Musk was born in 1971 in Johannesburg, South Africa, and spent his formative years there as a victim of the racist apartheid regime. Musk has been under his careful observation. In his writings, McGreal includes the piece What Does Elon Musk Believe?, while the PayPal Mafia can trace its origins back to apartheid-era South Africa. Josh Haldeman was Musk's grandfather, and I wanted Chris McGreal to tell me about him first. Joshua Haldeman, Musk's grandpa, relocates to South Africa in the year 1950. Apartheid starts to take hold around this time. Laws were initially enacted in the 1950s. While discriminatory laws existed in South Africa prior to apartheid, the latter's stricter enforcement brought to mind the Nuremberg laws, which the Nazis imposed on Jews in the 1930s. Similar restrictions on black people's movement and employment were in place in both instances. The current situation is becoming even more dire as a result of Trump's actions. When Elon Musk saluted like a Nazi, are you referring to that? The 1913 Land Act had already resulted in the loss of land for the majority of black South Africans. Whatever the case may be, white people accounted for less than 10% of the population, but owned over 85% of the land according to the Land Act of 1913. Put another way, the 1950s marked the beginning of apartheid regulations. The birth of Musk took place. Johannesburg was the site of Elon Musk's birth in 1971. At that time, John Vorster was the prime minister. The life story of John Vorster reveals a lot as well. Vorster openly supported and was associated with the Nazis in Germany during the 1930s, while he was a member of the OB, a neo-Nazi militia. It was responsible for a wide range of crimes, including the arson of Jewish stores in Johannesburg. Do you have a specific year in mind? That is, in the latter half of the 1930s. Following that, South Africa, being a friend of Britain's, joins the war against Hitler. Openly opposed to that is the OB and the groups that support them, such as Vorster and individuals like Vorster. Along with OB, they have connections to German military intelligence. Their goal is to assassinate South African Prime Minister Jan Smuts so that his government will support Hitler. Because the Germans are unwilling to renegotiate their weapon donations, that strategy will fail. John Vorster, who would go on to become prime minister, stands up and speaks in 1942, though. The strategy they employed, based on Christian nationalism, is also discussed by him. He compares Christian nationalism in South Africa to fascism and Nazism. Democracy is being undermined, nothing changes. In 1971, Elon Musk's father had already served as Prime Minister of South Africa. Elon Musk's political philosophy and his upbringing are based on Christian nationalism. So please, demonstrate the ways in which Elon Musk's father and grandfather became wealthy through their journeys to South Africa in the 1950s. In the 1950s, Elon Musk's grandpa, moved there. In terms of money, he is not doing great. He arrives with a small amount of money. Elon Musk's father, Errol, is the true business magnate. The majority of his wealth comes from investments in Zambian emerald mines. Conditions in southern African mines were extremely poor at the time. Extremely terrible conditions and a high mortality rate characterize the 1960s and 1970s, but they did become filthy rich. In addition to that, Musk's entire life was characterized by neo-colonial practices. At the time, the wealthy white population of South Africa lived in mansions staffed by servants. We can observe how much money Elon Musk's father Errol had following his divorce from Elon's mother. Her statement back then was, well, he owns a yacht, a jet, and a few houses. The abundance of funds was due to that. Was Vorster publicly endorsed by Elon Musk's grandfather? On multiple occasions, he expressed his unwavering support for apartheid. In 1950, he traveled from Canada to South Africa with the intention of making a positive impact. After what seems like an eternity, the grandpa passes away in an airplane crash. However, Vorster's personal feelings toward Elon Musk's grandmother are unknown because she lived for a while after his death. But the apartheid system had their support. You brought up the fact that Elon Musk's mother's family emigrated to South Africa. However, you should explain how they first arrived in Canada. South Africa is completely unrelated to the grandparents. It is the place of their birth and upbringing. During the 1930s, the grandpa, Joshua Haldeman, oversees the Canadian affiliate of the American movement Technocracy Incorporated. The goal of Technocracy Incorporated is to replace America's democratic government with one run by technocrats, often affluent business people. Part of the reason for that is the impact that FDR's victory, the New Deal, and the massive changes he brought to America had. And so their role would be to assist in the Canadian coup d'etat against FDR. In Canada, there was a separate movement that sought to overthrow the government. That team reports to Haldeman. The fascist overtones begin to emerge in the 1930s. They adopt a gray uniform resembling the Nazis' black and brown shirts. Thus, the movement is outlawed when Britain and Canada declare war on Germany in 1939, since it is evident that they back Hitler. The next thing you know, Elon Musk's grandfather Haldeman is in jail. Elon Musk's grandpa was taken into custody. Upon searching his home, they discovered both pro- and anti-Nazi propaganda. Following his brief incarceration, he is placed on a watch list to be monitored throughout the war due to concerns about potential rebellion. Indeed, he is widely believed to be a Nazi sympathizer. A travel companion, he travels to South Africa after approximately 10 years. He launches an ultra-racist political movement following the war and circulates a forgery titled The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Zionist leaders. I'm done. However, following the Holocaust and the war, it is evident that the Canadian people do not desire that. In terms of political influence, it is ineffective. South Africa is the object of his gaze. 2 years had passed by 1950 when the apartheid government came to power. In his opinion, that's just my kind of place. He had been attempting to accomplish this very thing in Canada since the 1930s. The couple then relocates to South Africa, where he staunchly defends apartheid alongside his wife May. Make an effort to remove the Marxist-leaning government of Angola and deter SWAPO. Nonetheless, South Africa ultimately loses the war. Peter Thiel, a close friend of Musk's and a fellow PayPal Mafia member, was enrolled in a Johannesburg school at that time. His father, however, secures employment at a uranium mine close to Swakopmund in southwest Africa during that period. When Peter Thiel is a little boy, his family moves there so he can attend school. Unlike South Africa, Southwest Africa was a German colony right up until the war's close. It was partly the British responsibility to look after South Africa at the time, since it was a colony of the United Kingdom. In the 1960s, South Africa gained its independence. As a result, South Africa retained control of Southwest Africa. However, a large portion of the local population could be traced back to Germany. Hermann Goering Strasse was the name of Windhoek's main street when I visited in the early 990s. Not the Ovambo chief himself, but his father, the governor of German Southwest Africa, was the inspiration for the name. In Swakopmund, things were considerably worse. It had a reputation for openly supporting Hitler and the Nazis for a long time, even into the 1980s and 1990s. In the middle of the 1970s, a writer stops at a gas station to refuel his car, according to an article in the New York Times. The employee salutes him in a Nazi fashion and yells out, "Heil Hitler!" Mugs, flags, and other merchandise with Nazi themes could be found in Swakopmund's gift shops. Public celebrations of Hitler's birthday were held annually in May. Thiel, on the other hand, grew up speaking German because he attended a school there. A uranium mine manager is his father's employer in that area. An intriguing aspect of the uranium mine is that it supplied uranium that was utilized in the 1970s by South African atomic bomb manufacturers. With Israel's assistance, these bombs were manufactured. As part of the agreement, South Africa agreed to send uranium in the form of yellow cake to Israel. We have no idea who or what supplied the yellow cake. The source might have been anywhere in South Africa, including the SWA uranium mine. However, South Africa was also producing nuclear bombs, so it sent yellow cake to Israel simultaneously. Discuss what Peter Thiel had to say regarding this as well. When we were at the first Republican National Convention, I recall Peter Thiel endorsing President Trump. For many years now, we have been covering conventions. So Peter Thiel claims that his experience in Swakopmund, particularly the school, which he describes as an extremely difficult learning environment, influenced him to become a libertarian and oppose the government. To me, that's the most intriguing aspect of it all. Outside of South Africa, there is a misunderstanding about the two main white populations. The Afrikaners, the ones we've been discussing, and the large English-speaking white population. On paper, the English-speaking population claimed to be against apartheid, but in practice, they enjoyed all the benefits that the system offered. The majority of them did little to put an end to apartheid, though there were a few courageous souls among them. But there are some who have done very well, like Thiel and Musk, and who don't claim credit for it. Their parents did very well due to apartheid. Their reasoning is that it is due to the Afrikaners. The reason behind this is a government that leans heavily toward the right. The next step is for them to discuss their parents' success following the end of apartheid. They follow this libertarian, anti-government road because they attribute their success to their own inherent ability. In essence, they are compelled to justify their own benefits from apartheid while evading accountability. Discuss the relationship between Elon Musk and Peter Thiel as well. Still, they were instrumental in the creation of PayPal. I get the impression that their worldviews are very similar. To them, freedom is paramount. Regardless of the type, they oppose DEI. A strong distaste for DEI is evident, as you have seen. White South African organizations in the US, such as AfriForum, have been echoing the same rhetoric regarding the war on white people in their home country. This messaging seems to have Thiel's approval. All things considered, I think they have a lot of common ground philosophically. Their closeness to one another is obvious. Discuss David Sacks and define the PayPal mafia. The fact that these individuals, who are among the wealthiest in the world, banded together to found PayPal and are now encircling the President of America is peculiar. The majority of Americans, in my opinion, fail to grasp the significance of all these connections. Yes, in the 1970s, David Sacks came into this world in Cape Town. He moves to Tennessee with his parents when he's 5 years old. To rephrase, he was not a childhood friend of Musk or Thiel, but he was a white South African kid at heart. His agreement with you is obvious. Just like you said, they're involved with the PayPal mafia. Because they built this company, they're all filthy rich. Every one of them is in charge and at the very top. Related to this same initiative, Sachs has now been appointed as Trump's AI and crypto czar. He did in fact raise a substantial amount of money for Trump, as you mentioned. The city of Cape Town is the site of his birth. They seem to have all arrived at essentially the same theory, at least in my opinion. Obviously, that has only grown stronger as a result of their success, their confidence in their own abilities, and the impediment posed by the government, in this instance the United States government or the South African government, are evident. In the first part, we covered this ground. At long last, Roelof Botha became a member of their small group of 4 Caucasian men of a specific age. And he has a history of connections to the PayPal mob. I would say that he is involved. Nothing he has said suggests that he is a Trump supporter. His opinion on this is something I don't know. His background, though, is fascinating. In the days of apartheid, his grandfather, Pik Botha, served as South Africa's last foreign minister. It was Pik's primary responsibility to travel the globe, focusing on Western countries, assuring people that apartheid was being transformed and overthrown. A lot of it was the political system was actually making things worse, even though so-called petty apartheid, which encompassed daily discrimination and segregation, was being dismantled. None of the non-white people who were granted the right to vote when the government proposed 3 parliaments to represent different groups were black. A black parliament may not have been possible due in part to the expulsion of citizens to the so-called independent homelands. Really didn't matter that they weren't South African anymore. After that, Pik Botha apologized and tried to explain this method to everyone she met. Plus, conservatives loved him because he reminded them so much of Reagan. The same thing happened with Thatcher in Britain. He became the symbol of acceptable racism. I met him when South Africa was transitioning from apartheid to democracy, and he was so naive by the time he died that he thought Mandela had to appoint him foreign minister, even though the president ultimately chose not to. Is it your belief that the families of these men attempted to flee Mandela's South Africa? Doesn't Mandela already supply all the materials to lock down all the video? They were already dispersing. What's fascinating is that Elon Musk departed in 1988 at the tender age of 18. Like any other white man, he could have enlisted in the South African army at that age. Either he ended up in the troubled townships, where there was a lot of unrest at the time, or he fought in the Angolan border war I mentioned earlier against SWAPO. Not to mention that South Africa was a hotbed of unrest during that period. The government was unable to exert control over the country due to the state of emergency. White forces were attempting to maintain order in the black communities. He departed prior to being obligated to perform any of those tasks.